So Audrey, I'm glad you're here, and I thought we could talk briefly about the works um, in this small exhibition that's focusing on two of your interactive electronic, can I call them multimedia pieces?
Yes, that sounds
Uh,
good. I think at one point I was using the word kinetic back in the 60s, and yeah, running around with any words you wanted, yeah, but they're electronic. And they have involvement with the audience through, and the sound becomes a major factor in the experience of the whole thing.
Can we talk about Wheel of Fortune? It's
Mm-hmm.
a piece from '68,
Mm-hmm.
and what's involved in Wheel of Fortune?
Well, it's a disc that you rotate, and it has um, images on the top, which are lit by 8 lights below.
Mm.
And when you spin the disc, these lights go on randomly, and if you stop the disc, one light stays on, and a little message comes on, and you can either relate that to the image on the wheel that got lit up and what you're hearing, or if it might be right on in case of maybe an astronaut landing on the moon, Neil Armstrong, and that image is there, and you might just happen to be very coincidentally on the mark. Otherwise, you might have some really disturbing overlap, and you interpret that the way your life is.
Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune,
Yes.
right. And there's another aspect to it. It also works by grabbing a bar, which is around the edge. It initially was a hula hoop, but that didn't work. That didn't last too long. It broke down, so we got a metal rod. And when you hold on to that, your body's electricity causes the lights to work. And if you're very tiny, you might have trouble getting it going.
Mm.
If you have, a large person with good electrical outlet, it will go more rapidly. And then when you let go, again, you have one light and one image. And there's no instructions. You come to it and you play with it, figure it out.
Can I ask how you assembled the images that you use in Wheel of Fortune? There's stuff from magazines, but there's also paintings and ancient art.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd almost have to see the thing right there, maybe to pick out why I did this and did that. It was the period when we suddenly have this electronic explosion of information, and we were getting information that overlapped each other insanely.
Mm-hmm.
And that insanity is part of what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
The soundtrack does that, the images do that. I did one piece earlier called a hexagon, and it was all the front page, all the subjects on the front page of the newspaper in a day. And so that was just a broad spectrum of authority figures, old age, children, sex. There were 6 of them. And that had a soundtrack, again, which you could pick out how it was going to relate. But the big thing was to have a soundtrack that never seemed to repeat itself.
Mm-hmm.
So these pieces had an ongoing aspect to them. It would be very hard to stay and hear it repeat. With the Wheel of Fortune, the tape isn't very long, but then the tape's not on for very long, and it has to go through all its activation to get on, so you seldom will hear the repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that idea,
Mm-hmm.
that it's non-ending like life is. It's going on, changing all the time. The experience you've had is yours, and somebody else will come and have another one.
And the other piece, the other multimedia piece is Electronic Seascape, which you made about a year after Wheel
That's
of
right.
Fortune,
Yeah.
and it has a very different kind of feeling to it, I think.
Very, yeah. I guess the Wheel of Fortune is much more of a play, fun, a certain seriousness if you happen to reach it in a certain way. But the seascape is more contemplative. It comes out of nature very, very deeply, and that's very much a part of my life. One summer at Savory, I was doing some drawings, and they were quite stylized, which was quite different for me at the time. I brought them home, and I started looking at these, and I don't know, the idea for seascape grew very much like I would do a painting. I might have an idea, but I never ever knew where I was going in the end. And one thing led to another. It was also during the time of intermedia when we were, I guess, on the Wheel of Fortune and on the Electric Seascape. I was down at an intermedia event at one point, and 3 engineers came in, and one of them happened to be Bob Mills, and they were all interested in what was going on, but Bob Mills sort of stuck with it, and he seemed to be he's very much an independent, very brilliant, and really seems to enjoy artists, and so he would always say to me, anything you can imagine you can do. So I'd start there, and then we'd back up, and then we'd go ahead, and then the deadline for having it shown came, and that's where we stopped. And so now the Electric Seascape has been enriched greatly because I've had more time to think about it, and the electronics, like the technological world is just, got leaps and bounds. And so it's being rebuilt, really had major surgery, inner major surgery. And it's now got a much longer life than it ever had, its potential. And I've met up with Hildy Westerkamp, who does very brilliant things with environmental sound, and is very experienced and worldwide. She lectures, she edits a magazine, she belongs to an environmental audio group, she does workshops. Anyway, we've known each other for years, and we've always talked whenever we met at a party or something, and the idea came up as I couldn't think of anybody to do sound that I could think to do it better. And I phoned her up, and she was enthusiastic, and we actually have a great friendship right now.
That's good.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing that piece installed.
Me too.
Can we just talk briefly about the fluorescent piece and how it works?
That's the phosphorescent.
The phosphorescent piece,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's a material I found one day. I was down at Benson's Silkscreen. This was a store that's no longer there. Some people might remember it. Anyway, they sold architects' supplies and drafting supplies and interesting materials. I always wanted to get in there and see something, and I used their electrofilm, which is on the Electric Seascape and the Wheel of Fortune. But they had a little patch of material, and it was on the counter. I asked what it was, and they said it's a phosphorescent little disc that's put up for night security, so they can find the switches and the lights, and it stays lit in the dark. So I thought, do you sell it in larger quantities? And he said no, but maybe Benson Silkscreen might be able to help you out. So I wrote them, and I found I could get it sort of 18 feet, 2 feet wide in rolls. And from there I went and made a column of 2 feet by 8 feet. And it had 5 sides, and Karen Jameson, who went on to become a big dancer in our city, brought in her dancers, and on our living room wall I had these panels up, and she devised a kind of dance that she would do with her dancers coming up to these panels, where they could leave their own image. It's almost like a shadow photography, and with black light you didn't have to light the room, but you could leave an image and then it would wash away. So what we did there is had black light, the column, 5 petals coming off of each panel, And the dancers would come in, and there's a metronome going, which would give them some counting device in their own heads. And they made an impression on the phosphorescence, and then would fall back, and you would see this display of what they had done, and then the light, it would wash away, and they would come back and redo it. So what we're kind of hoping here is that the public will come in and do their own dance. We'll have only 2 panels, but maybe they can interact. Yeah.